Six months into his administration, President Trump is now the third U.S. president to offer a solution to what ails us in Afghanistan. And is the policy doomed to failure, or is it going to work this time? I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the paying members at BillWhittle.com. Gents, we talked about on our members-only episode on Scott's about the salesmanship of what I thought was the most solid policy speech the president's given, either as president or as a candidate. But I want to talk about the meat of it, the gist of it, the policy of it, because we've been fighting this war now for almost exactly 16 years. We've got a weary public, we've got a stretched out Army and Marine Corps, and now we're going to send anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 more troops over there. So let's talk about this, shall we? The two items in Trump's speech that give me hope, and I'm maybe skeptic is too strong a word about our effort in Afghanistan, but call me a worrier that we're not going to meet our goals there. But two items from this speech give me real hope. Here's the first one, and I want to give this one to you, Scott. The president said, "We can no longer be silent about Pakistan's safe havens for terrorist organizations. The Taliban and other groups that pose a threat to the region and beyond. Pakistan has much to gain from partnering with our effort in Afghanistan. It has much to lose by continuing to harbor criminals and terrorists." Scott, our land supply lines go through Pakistan. It takes a lot of chutzpah to put the government there on notice. Did Trump do the right thing there?
That's good old-fashioned geostrategy right there.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not looking at the problem in isolation, but it's taking a broader regional view, a multi-ethnic view, and he actually got down on India a little bit too, and basically said, "Hey, y'all got to help over here as well." And so, I thought that was really impressive. The question of whether a policy of victory in Afghanistan can succeed comes down to the definition of what does victory look like. The only little hint of concern that I had during the course of the speech, and it was a small one, but it could prove substantial, was when he basically said, our job there isn't to establish democracies around the world. Our job is to kill terrorists. And I was like, okay, that's good. Good as far as it goes. I just can't help but remembering from H.R. McMaster's book, Dereliction of Duty, how often LBJ would tell his top advisors, we just need to kill more Viet Cong. We need to kill more Viet Cong because that makes it look like we're winning. So, I want a further explication of what victory looks like. And I, in my members only episode this week, I very openly said, I'm with the president on this. I think that he has made the right call, and I think he surrounded himself with wise counsel. The question is, how are we going to define victory in a world of really no good solutions? Because no matter what you think of what the president should have done, there are no good solutions there. You pull out and you just abandon it to the Taliban and to ISIS and the other 20 terrorist groups that are there in the mountains of Afghanistan and Pakistan. So I think he took the least bad of the solutions and then put behind it something it hasn't had in years, and that was the will to win and taking the shackles off of our military so that the generals can make the decisions on the ground there, and the troops have the tools with which to combat this evil.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the shackles, because that leads up to the second quote that I wanted to give to you, Bill. I mean, this is exactly what Scott was just talking about there. The president said, micromanagement from Washington, D.C. does not win battles. They are won in the field, drawing upon the judgment and expertise of wartime commanders and frontline soldiers acting in real time with real authority and with a clear mission to defeat the enemy. That's why we will also expand authority for American armed forces to target the terrorist and criminal networks that sow violence and chaos throughout Afghanistan. Bill, I've been waiting to hear those words for probably about 14 and a half years. How about you?
Funny how that vile, lewd, ostentatious ignoramus in one sentence was able to condense more wisdom than the Harvard-educated, very eloquent and impeccably dressed predecessor, isn't it? Funny how that works. Yeah, you're either there or here's the thing about these half wars. You're either in it or you're not. If you can do the whole thing by drones, then you can kind of live in this twilight zone. But if you got troops on the ground, you're either in it or you're not. Afghanistan is not the same as Iraq and certainly not the same as Vietnam. But in Vietnam, after a commitment to win the war, Nixon bombing Hanoi, they got to the peace table, and when the war was over, when the shooting stopped, North Vietnam was the same border. They'd launched this, 20-year invasion, and they'd failed. And then that peace was given away by Democrats in Congress. They simply voted away the peace. We saw the same thing in Iraq, where after some serious mistakes and a great deal of tragedy, George Bush realized he was on the wrong path, took Petraeus's advice, went big with the surge, and for the last 5 or 6 months of the Bush administration, wasn't a single American casualty in Iraq. If we had done in Iraq, whether you thought it was right to go in or not, we did go in, and we could have basically prevented ISIS from forming completely if we'd given Iraq the same kind of treatment that we gave Germany or Japan or Korea, which is we keep American troops there. They don't do any fighting. They just stay there. They're the tripwire. Somebody wants to start something with the Iraqis, they kill an American doing it, then big bad things are going to happen. And Afghanistan is not that. Afghanistan is a series of tribes that has never been a nation and never will be, I don't think. So here's my analysis on it. Our job in America, Americans' job in Afghanistan is to mow the lawn. We just have to go in there and cut the grass, and that means we have to go in there and reduce these terrorists and keep them reduced. And the more weeds we pull, the better the country is going to be, and the better the lives of the people are going to be. But they're not going to have a democracy there, and unfortunately, Trump didn't sound like he wanted to impose that. But if we are going to be over there mowing the grass and killing terrorists over there instead of over here, and we hear stories about American soldiers who don't have enough supplies, who don't have enough air support, who are stuck in these forward fire bases, feel cut off, and it's because we don't have the resources. That is shocking and shameful, and that's the result of the previous administration. So I'm with him 100%. I think we have to be there in order to fight them there rather than here. I think we need to kill these bad guys who are wrecking their country, all of the world, and our country as well. But if we're going to be there with American troops on the ground, we better be there in enough strength so that our guys are basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically calling in airstrikes from fairly safe positions and not being overrun or not being able to respond to crisis situations because we were half there and half not.
Steve, can I add something to that?
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Bill, you bring up an excellent point, and I actually saw a while back, before H.R. McMaster was discussed as a potential national security advisor or any role, and beyond his role as a soldier, I watched a speech he gave one time where he talked about the importance of taking and holding territory to provide an atmosphere within which the local people can put their lives back together. And he was essentially, without going head to head with President Obama at the time, he was essentially making the argument that you can't just fight a remote drone war because you can't see exactly what happened on the ground. First of all, you can't target as well. Secondly, once you have taken out some assets, you can't do anything really to prevent them from being reestablished unless you're able to take that territory, hold that territory, and give the local people an opportunity to get their act back together again. So I hear in this speech from President Trump a lot of that kind of joint operations, cross division, what do they call that? The branches of the military.
It's jointness when the different branches work together.
Yes, when the Marines and the Air Force and the Navy and the Army and the Coast Guard or whatever, everything is working together, taking advantage of all their capabilities in order to secure the conditions for a lasting peace.
Yeah, there are a couple of things here that really get me up. One is to stop this nation-building stuff, because all that does is fatten the pockets of fat cats in the capital, in Kabul, and really poison the central government against its own people and vice versa. So that stuff has got to stop if we want to give any legitimacy to this government we've been nurturing along since 2002. And the other is, kind of a compare and contrast thing. President Obama's first big speech on this in 2009 was to promise a huge buildup of 120,000 troops in Afghanistan, and with a time limit, with an expiration date, which just told the Taliban exactly how long they needed to lie low until the whole thing was over. And the other thing, of course, President Obama did is the soldiers were over there to fight, but they had to ask permission from all the lawyers first, whether lawyers in the White House, lawyers in the Pentagon, and all the rest. The rules of engagement were far too strict to get anything done. And then, of course, we drew our strength down again. What President Trump has done is said, we're going to send more men over. He didn't specify how many, so nobody really knows. And he didn't set a time limit on it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's an open-ended engagement forever, but it does tell the Taliban and other enemies over there that you can't just hunker down, that we're going to come and root you out. But the most important thing is this unshackling, because I believe if we have 10 or 12,000 troops over there that don't have to consult with the lawyers on every little thing, then they can accomplish a lot more than 120,000 soldiers could when they're ruled by the lawyers in Washington, D.C. So that's my hope. We might actually be able to eke out a win on this one, and after 16 years, boy, we sure have earned it, haven't we? And that's your right angle on Trump and Afghanistan, brought to you by the paying members at BillWhittle.com. If you like what you see, click on over, join yourself, because we'd love to have you here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.